When it comes to warships, we usually think of massive steel behemoths representing the status and power of the nations that built them. However, throughout history, some ships have sought to break the conventional mold of what the world thinks a warship is supposed to be. Whether from military necessity or to incorporate new technology, these ships were born from thinking outside the box. In this video, I plan to review 5 of the strangest warship designs ever built. The first ships I want to discuss are the Nelson-class battleships, which include the HMS Nelson and HMS Rodney. The most noticeable feature is that the ship's main armament is located on the forward section, while the ship's superstructure is situated aft. This design breaks with almost all the conventional designs, which left at least one battery on the aft portions with the superstructure toward the vessel's middle. This design was born out of necessity. In 1922, after World War I, the United States, Britain, Japan, Italy, and France agreed to the Washington Naval Treaty, which limited the size and armament of warships to prevent an arms race between the former allies. The treaty limited battleships to 35,000 tons and 16-inch guns. The Nelson class was born from the need to maximize the effectiveness of the ships while staying within the treaty limits. Moving the main 16-inch guns forward allowed designers to reduce the size of the armored citadel to save weight. In addition, the ship had only 2 large propellers, and the ship's design sacrificed engine power and speed in order to maximize armor and armaments. All British battleships before and after the Nelson class had 4 propellers. In addition, the ship's internal armor was sloped, allowing less thick armor to be used while maintaining overall effectiveness and saving more weight. The superstructure also made sacrifices by being essentially unarmored, and even the deckwood was changed from teak to fir to save as much weight as possible to stay within treaty limits. Construction was began in 1922 on the 2 ships, and they would be commissioned in 1927. Both ships would serve with distinction during World War II. The Nelson would strike a mine in 1940, causing severe damage requiring repair, and in 1941, while escorting convoys in the Mediterranean, she was hit by a torpedo, putting her out of commission again. Most notably, in 1943, the official surrender of Italy was signed on board the Nelson. Nelson would also go on to provide shore bombardment for D-Day and would later be sent to the Far East for the remainder of the war. The ship was ultimately scrapped at the end of the 1940s. The Rodney would also participate in convoy escort duties, but most notably, the Rodney would join in the battle that ultimately sunk the German battleship Bismarck. In the battle, Rodney scored numerous hits on the Bismarck with her 16-inch guns and suffered minor damage from return fire. Rodney would later go on to the Mediterranean for more convoy duty, and later, Rodney would also provide shore bombardment for D-Day with her sister ship. While in Normandy, Rodney suffered 2 collisions with landing ships that severely damaged her. After repairs, she would resume escort duties and was also scrapped in the late 40s. While the Nelson class was born out of restriction and compromise, both battleships did serve with distinction. The next ship I want to look at isn't technically a ship, but a boat. That is the French submarine Surcouf, which was a so-called cruiser submarine. The most immediate feature is a dual 8-inch gun turret on the submarine. That wasn't her only major feature, and like the Nelson-class battleships, Surcouf was born of the Washington Naval Treaty. While capital ships like battleships and aircraft carriers were limited in size and armament, submarines, destroyers, and cruisers were also limited. They could not be more than 10,000 tons and could not have guns larger than 8 inches. The Surcouf was designed to be an underwater heavy cruiser that would seek out and engage in surface combat and was well armed for this role. In addition to the dual 8-inch guns, the Surcouf also had 10 torpedo tubes. 4 were located on the bow, and there were 2 swiveling launchers on the aft portion of the sub, containing 3 tubes each for a grand total of 10 torpedo tubes. In addition, the sub had 2 37mm and 4 13.2mm anti-aircraft guns. On top of this, the sub also contained a hangar for its MB-411 observation plane that was explicitly designed to be used on the Surcouf. The plane was disassembled and stored in the hangar and could be pulled out and assembled in approximately 20 minutes before being launched. A crane would then be used to recover the plane. All of these additions made Surcouf the largest submarine in the world at the time of her construction. Surcouf was originally laid down in 1927 and commissioned in 1934. With the fall of France in 1940, the Surcouf fled to Plymouth, England for refuge. On July 3, 1940, Britain issued an ultimatum to the French fleets throughout the world to either rejoin the fight against Germany, scuttle their vessels, or be put out of Germany's reach. The Surcouf, while in England, was boarded by British troops to be seized, and a firefight ensued, killing 1 French sailor and 3 British sailors. The Surcouf was later turned over to the Free French forces for escort duties. The sub also helped secure the islands of St. Pierre and Miquelon off the coast of Newfoundland. While transiting the Caribbean en route to the Panama Canal in February of 1942, the Surcouf vanished with 130 sailors and was never seen again. The sub's fate remains unknown to this day, as the wreck has never been found. Despite its tragic loss, the Surcouf remains one of the most unique submarines ever built. Next up is the infamous Zumwalt-class destroyers of the U.S. Navy. Its unique hull design comes from the desire to reduce its radar cross-section, making the Zumwalt class some of the largest so-called stealth ships with a weight of around 16,000 tons. The ships were designed with a shore bombardment role to fill the void left by the decommissioning of the Iowa-class battleships. This was supposed to be filled by the Advanced Gun System, a 155mm shore bombardment gun using ammunition explicitly designed for the gun. Initially, 32 Zumwalt-class destroyers were planned, but only 3 were built, while the others were canceled. The ships suffered from numerous issues. For one, the ammunition was so expensive for their advanced gun system that the U.S. Navy opted to scrap the entire program and planned to remove the gun systems from the existing Zumwalts in service since they no longer had any ammunition for them. This means that the ship's original purpose as a land attack destroyer was gone. In addition, they had a limited missile capacity and were unstable in open waters. The costs of the ships also contributed to their downfall, with a total cost of over $7.5 billion per ship compared to the far more numerous and successful Arleigh Burke-class destroyers that cost around $2.5 billion per ship. The Zumwalt class was unique in its design and efforts at innovation, but it fell victim to its own complexity and prohibitive costs. Now, on to the Marshal Ney class monitors, which are perhaps my favorite ships on the list for this video. These monitors result from 2 large 15-inch gun turrets lying around and not having a vessel to put them on. The Royal Navy, not wanting to let 2 good turrets go to waste, designed a ship around them. The HMS Renown and HMS Repulse were initially supposed to be Revenge-class battleships before being redesigned to battle cruisers at the outbreak of World War I. This changed them from needing 4 15-inch gun turrets to 3, but the turrets had already been built. At the beginning of World War I, the Royal Navy needed coastal defense vessels that could operate in shallow water as well as provide some shore bombardment across the English Channel. Known as monitors, these shallow draft ships were built by the dozens, and with 2 extra 15-inch gun turrets, the Royal Navy decided to design a monitor to go around these guns, thus giving rise to the Marshal Ney class. Both ships of the class, the Marshal Ney and the HMS Marshal Soult, were built in only a few months in 1915. The quick design of the ships led to numerous issues. Despite limited use of their 15-inch guns in a shore bombardment role against German positions in Belgium, both monitors would ultimately have the large and unwieldy gun turrets stripped from them and replaced with smaller caliber guns. Overall, they are still an unusual ship with a unique place in history. Now last, but certainly not least, is the Monitor Novgorod, built by Russia in the 1870s, and yes, this is a circular ship that is by far one of the strangest ships ever built and put into service. With a diameter of 101 feet and 2 11-inch rifled guns, the Novgorod was intended to be used as a coastal defense ship around the Crimean Peninsula. The circular design was meant to allow a shallower draft while allowing decent armor on the ship. Despite its downright abnormal design, the circular hull made for a relatively stable gun platform. Its 11-inch guns were located on turntables that could spin 360 degrees. The biggest drawback of the Novgorod was that it couldn't be steered very well at all, and in rough seas couldn't be steered at all. It was also slow, getting only 7.5 miles per hour or 12 kilometers per hour at most. Still, it met the needs of Russia. She would remain in service until 1903, and then she was ultimately scrapped. Her longevity is at least somewhat an indication of her value at the time. So there you have it. While this list is certainly not the end of the unique ships in the world, I think it's a good start to the strangest ships you'll ever see. If you have any other ships to suggest, please leave them in the comments below and I may include them in a future video. Please like this video so it can reach more people, and I'll see you on the next one.